Welcome to Reader's Corner. I'm Elizabeth.
I'm Julie.
And fantastic. And we are here to discuss A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole. It's very exciting for our romance reads. I am so jazzed. Are you so jazzed?
Yes, it's a great book.
We are the most
Yes.
jazzed. Okay. So this is you have a physical copy.
I
Mine's
do
on
have
Kindle.
a physical copy.
It's beautimous. It's from the library. Check it out at the
is.
library.
Do curbside pickup.
Yes. So this book, we choose our books by availability on Hoopla and staff preference. So it is available for you online, but you can also do curbside pickup, good things. And then, Julie, do you want to talk a little bit about the genre of romance and what we're doing here with romance?
Absolutely. All right. So romance is actually kind of like a giant genre made up of a bunch of subgenres, but the romance writers of America essentially say that every romance has two basic parts. It has the central love story, and that has also an emotional, satisfying, and optimistic ending. So this particular book, A Princess in Theory, is a contemporary romance, and those are books that are set in present day, and the main focus is on romantic relationships. And so there are tons and tons of subplots that you can have, and you can also have romance as a subplot in bigger genres. And so many of the subplots that can have like smaller backgrounds or little side stories. A Princess in Theory has a bunch, which we'll kind of hit on later. And then some of the other subgenres that you can see in romance are things like suspense or rom-com, historic, sci-fi, fantasy, and so on. So there are lots of different common themes and characteristics that you have in romances. So most romances have that wonderful happily ever after. That being said, there are definitely times when the characters do not get their happily ever after. I'm looking at you, Nicholas Sparks.
But those don't count. Those don't count.
They shouldn't count. But there are definitely times where the characters just, they have their moment where they decide that they're in love, but they don't get that forever, which makes me sad. That's why I don't like those books as much. But they do always kind of have that moment where they do confess their undying love for each other, which I think is great. So
yes,
right.
confession's always cute.
Yes,
We are
Elizabeth,
on board for happily ever afters only.
Yes, they make me happy. That's why I personally like romance, because I feel like the world is always full of sadness. You can always find something really sad and tragic going on in the world. And I like to pick up a book that I know that I can pick up this book and it's going to end happy, and that makes me happy. And that's the thing I like about romance, especially the romantic comedies where I know I'm going to laugh along the way as well.
You're so right. Like, who has time for being sad? Not me. No, there's enough.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, tell us about A Princess in Theory.
I would love to tell you about A Princess in Theory. So A Princess in Theory is by Alyssa Cole. She's amazing. And you know those spam emails you can get sometimes, and you just send them to your spam folder and then you delete them? Well, this grad school student in this book named Naledi Smith has been receiving spam emails saying that she's engaged to an African prince. And when she finally gets sick of it and sends a very frustrated reply, on the other end of the line, the prince is overjoyed and very intrigued, because here's the girl lost forever from his childhood engagement, swearing at him in a very small email to go away. So Prince to-be-so goes to America to find out what the heck is going on, and then, let me quote from the official summary, when she mistakes the prince for a pauper, to-be-so can't resist the chance to experience life and love without the burden of his crown. This is one of those faking a different identity romances, of course. And it's one of those engaged to a prince romance. Fabulous. It's part of the series called The Reluctant Royals. And it's by Alyssa Cole, who is just amazing and covers a bunch of romance genres. She writes historical, science fiction, and contemporary romance novels. She has characters who are both straight and queer. And she's written 19 books, I think. And she's won an awards, a bunch of them, for a book called An Extraordinary Union, which is set in the Civil War. A Princess in Theory, this book, which was a New York Times notable book, and a sci-fi romance called Mixed Signals. Julie, what do people think of this book online?
So It has really positive reviews. So we'll start with Hoopla, because that's where a lot of you guys are going to find this book. So Hoopla,
Definitely.
the users have a 4.5 rating, and you can find it on Hoopla in both ebook and e-audiobook. And Elizabeth, did you listen to the audiobook?
I did not. Is the
You
audiobook
read
good?
it? It is. I really liked it. So I listened to the audiobook and Elizabeth read the book. So both are really great.
Both are great. Did
Um,
I say the names right since you listened to the
I
audiobook? Did I say
think
the names right?
so. It's been a little while since I listened to
No, I
it.
getcha.
Um, And then on Amazon, it has an overall rating of 4.4 stars, so a little bit less. And F. Coley stated, 5 out of 5 stars, familiar trope, but well executed and sassy. I definitely like the fact that a lot of romance authors now are kind of taking those familiar tropes that you find, like The Prince and the Pauper, and you'll find tons and tons of twists right now in Pride and Prejudice, but they're definitely kind of like a new, fresh take, which I think is really nice, to take a familiar story that everyone kind of knows, like The Prince and the Pauper, and just put this totally new twist on it. I think that's fun.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, and it's not so much The Prince and the Pauper, more like you said, like the case of mistaken identity.
It's all the tropes kind of thing. Like it's
Yeah,
the royalty tropes, it's the mistaken identity, it's all of it.
lots of it. So Goodreads has it a little bit lower. They're at a 3.5. But Roxanne said, this book was a lot of fun, sexy, with a compelling story. I really enjoyed the romance as it developed between Letty and Thabiso. Both interesting characters together and as individuals. Lots of erotic tension and deeply satisfying ending. Definitely dive into this one. So, and I agree.
All
It was
right.
fantastic. Otherwise, we wouldn't be
And
talking about it.
or else we wouldn't be talking about it,
Yes.
right? Well, we might be talking about it,
Yes, that's true. But
but
we like talking
we'd
about
rather
it.
talk
This is
about the
nice.
fantastic ones.
Yes.
Yes. I think we both really liked this book, didn't we?
I really like this book. It's definitely one of my favorites that I've read in the last couple of years. So, and I've read
Oh, definitely.
almost all the books in the series. I didn't realize until we were talking earlier that I had missed one of the small novellas, but I have a hold on it. So we'll fix
Right.
that
And
situation very soon.
vice versa. So you haven't read the novella Can't Escape Love, and I
Yes.
haven't read the novella Duke by Default. Sorry, novel, not novella. It's longer. But we're both missing one book in this beautiful canon. So
Yes.
I've got that on hold as well, so I can check it out. But I love this whole series, honestly. For this book, I really love that Letty is a scientist. It's so good to get STEM rep in there
Yes,
with a main
especially
character.
female STEM rep.
Oh, so much. Yeah, like women in STEM. Whoop whoop.
Yes.
And she values her career too much to just toss it away when she finds out that she's got this royal business going on, this royal past, and this royal interested in her. A lot of stuff happens in the middle there, of course, because romance, secrets. But it's very clear even from the start. Like the very first time you see her, she's in her lab, right?
Yeah.
And she's working on an experiment and dealing with some paperwork. So the job is very central to her character.
Exactly. I also really like that she's really confident in what she wants in life, and that for her, working hard is not a problem. You know, like it's not,
Oh yeah.
she doesn't, no one likes to work hard necessarily, but she doesn't spend the whole book complaining about it. You know, oh, I have to have this job, like I go to grad school, and, you know, my apartment isn't super nice. And it's just sort of like, well, these are the things that I have to do to get where I want. And that's okay. I will do these things to get where I want to go. And I think that's really endearing in a character. And kind of as a small spoiler, I definitely like that once she finds out that the prince is a prince, which I think we all knew was going to happen, right?
You have to find out eventually.
Yeah. She's not just like, you know, so many of the girls in these books are just like, oh, you know, she's just like, it's almost like, but now I don't like you as much. Now there's drama.
You lied.
Yeah. Aside from all of that too, but it's just like very much like, but now there's drama. I don't know. I had a plan. Right. This was not in the plan.
That's true too. She's like, I had a life plan. This is not the life plan. Let's talk about this because this upends a lot of stuff. She has very practical concerns, which I appreciate a lot. And tying into what you said earlier about how hard she works, I also like how hard she works. Like she's committed, she's dedicated, she's willing to go out there and get it. But I also really like that the book is like, hold your horses a little bit. You don't have to push yourself to the edge of exhaustion. It is okay to have healthy relationships and healthy boundaries with your work, with yourself, and with other people. Because I think that's a huge theme in this book, is that Letty pushes herself and takes all the responsibility on her shoulders because she's the only one she trusts to handle it. And she knows that if she takes it, she'll get it done. You know,
which is not something we know anything
not
about.
Relatable at all.
No,
What? No. I never would take on too much responsibility. What?
No, but I would never stay up late working on work. That's not a thing that happens.
We don't do that. No. Never. Nuh-uh. We're liars. Okay. But yeah, so Letty is, and I like how it calls that out, that a relationship or a friendship or even a work environment can be so great in so many ways, can involve care. Like you can care about the work, or somebody can care about you and you can care about them. And there can be a lot of good things in a space.
Oh yeah.
That you still need to put those boundaries in place to say, okay, but you have to have respect for my time and for me as a person. You can't knock at my door at 4 a.m. This is one of the things that happens with one of the characters. You can't just show up at my door in the middle of the night because you want to talk and check on me. Like, it's intensely sweet that you want to check on me, but also it's 4 a.m. and you didn't even call.
Yeah.
You know?
And I definitely like the fact that the friends are able to be honest with each other, because I think that a lot of times there are very superficial friendships that exist in the world where you can see someone being on this terrible downward spiral and you're just kind of like, ooh, that's bad. Just gonna watch that from over here. And these characters are definitely more kind of like able to go and talk to each other and say, no, you're making bad choices. You're screwing up your life. Like, please don't do this. I love you. Don't do this.
Even with the prince, like his first scene ends in a flaming disaster, to say the least. And Letty is not afraid to just be like, okay, that was bad.
That was bad.
That was
literal
bad of you.
Flaming
You made bad
disaster.
Choices. This was a disaster. You are a disaster. And Tabitha was like, no one ever tells me that I'm a disaster. And meanwhile, his assistant is over in the corner going, I do.
Yeah, all the time.
I tell you all the time.
All the time. Which I love their relationship between the assistant and the prince. Oh, it's beautiful because she's just the one who's over, like, she doesn't sugarcoat anything. She doesn't, she's just like over there like, that's bad choice and you're stupid. Like, just love that.
She is my favorite. She is my favorite.
Yes.
Like, I love her. She's fantastic.
And the sarcasm. Oh, the glorious sarcasm.
It bites. She bites. It's biting sarcasm.
Yeah.
And like, I also like that they have, like, she doesn't just exist to serve him. There's this whole line of dialogue, I forget where it is, where she's like, no, I'm the womanizer, not you. So just keep it in order. Like, I know you date a lot of girls, but I am the one here who is allowed to do that because I'm not a prince.
Yes. And how she'll just, like, she just slays him, like verbally slays him. And it's a thing of beauty. Like, I would love the books for just that.
Honestly, yeah. Like, and I've read an interview with Alyssa Cole. I think this was over with Tor magazine, that says she always makes an effort to include strong friendships in her books because friendship is just as important as romance. And I really appreciate that as a reader. Like, it's frustrating sometimes to read a romance book where you have love interest A, love interest B, and then the cardboard cutouts who support them no matter what they do. And that's not what this book is. You have genuinely interesting people in the sidelines. Like, Portia's sister, who shows up in Can't Escape Love, shows up for just one scene in this book, and I instantly was like, my favorite. She's so good. I want to talk to her more. Oh, she's gone now. But yes, with all those characters, it's just so good to have those friendships.
They all have a lot of depth, especially, which I really appreciate, because they show up, and a lot of them show up in later books and get their own books and novellas and things like that, where you're able to get kind of a deeper dive, which is really great. But you want to, because you're like, but what else? But I want more.
What happened?
More. Like
Show
Portia, especially.
Sweet character development.
Yes.
Like, please. Yes.
More of that.
More of that. And they all change over the course of their books, which helps.
They do. There's a lot of growth. They're not just these completely, like you said, they're not flat cardboard cutouts. They're like a real person that you want to be friends with.
Portia. Are we going to talk about how we like Portia? Portia is great.
I love Portia.
Yes.
because she's
So Portia
sassy.
is the best friend in this book.
She's the
And
bestie.
she's the slightly problematic bestie. She's the one I mentioned earlier, who in like the second chapter comes knocking at 4 a.m. But she's also super genuinely caring.
Yeah.
And she's also dealing with like some really bad life choices and really bad coping mechanisms. Like she is a very complex human happening,
Yes.
and just full of sass.
Multifaceted.
Multifaceted. And
She's
she
the
makes
D20
mistakes.
of friends.
She's the D20 of friends. There's
Yes.
so many sides. So many sides. There is a choice in this book that I was not happy at all with Portia for. I think you know what I'm talking about. But I really appreciate her as a character, and I appreciate what I've seen of her. I got to read this much of Duke by Default before somebody took it. But I really appreciate what I saw of her there, where she was just like, new me, starting over, gonna fix it. And like, you get to see some of what's going on in her head and how she projects this very confident, brave, the friend who's full of light and laughter front, and then behind it there's some other stuff going on that she maybe doesn't express quite as readily.
I think so many times there are those of us that think that we can only show people our best selves. Well, but if I show you the icky parts, you won't love me anymore. And
exactly,
you know, Portia kind of gets to the point where she realizes that she's already been showing some icky parts. So, you know, her friends still love her. So, you know, she can go ahead and just
it's okay. Maybe she can be a little messy.
Yes. Just mess all over.
Mess all over. And that's such a huge part of this book's journey for Letty too, because Letty is over there and she's like, I have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Like, what's the phrase? Because she has twice as good to get the same respect. I don't know the exact quote, but
something about
she has to be twice as good. She's a Black woman in STEM. She's not getting respect. Anywhere she goes, she doesn't get respect. So she's like, I got to get twice as good to get half as much. That's what I have to do. And finally, she has some people who are like, okay, yeah, the world sucks, but we're also here for you. You can trust us.
And I think it's hard. That could definitely mirrors a lot of what people think, because I think so many of us in the world think that no matter what we do, we'll ever be good enough, and that, you know, people don't really love us. You know, they're there for us. They say they're there for us, but as soon as things get, you know, too bad or we say the wrong thing, they're going to be out the door. And I really appreciate that kind of, they discuss that no, there are actual people in this world who really do just love you and want to be there for you and care for you. Exactly. And they don't care. That's they knew what they were taking on, you know.
Exactly. But trust is scary, so I'm glad this book that feels like a very realistic conflict to put in a book. Sometimes romances will give a character a conflict and I'm like, no, your character flaw is being stupid and not noticing things. I can't relate. But in this case, I'm like, oh, this is intensely relatable because we have this sort of atmosphere where how can I trust you? And that's the main question. How can I leave the entire way I've thought the world works to readjust that viewpoint?
Well, especially because, and she says it pretty early in the book, you know, you understand that she spent a lot of her life like in and out of foster care. And I mean, that when you don't grow up with, you know, a foundation of, you know, people who are always there for you, it makes it really hard just to trust in general. But even those of us who had families that were there for us all the time, you still, you know, trust is hard.
Yeah, of course. It so is.
So is.
I guess the last thing I really loved about this book, that's a lie. I love so many things.
So many things.
But I really appreciate how diverse this book is in the romance sphere, because I know that's been a big talk. That's why the Romance Writers of America collapsed before. I don't know if you heard about that.
A little bit. You were telling me about it a while ago.
Yeah, I was. But anyway, the diverse representation of this in this book is so good. And I'm not even talking about the fact that all of these are romances featuring Black women as the main character, which is so great, by the way. But we've got a lesbian character in this book, and her romance happens in the background and gets its own book later.
Yes.
We've got later in the series main characters dealing with all sorts of disability and neurodiversity, from ADHD and autism to being in a wheelchair or dealing with mental illness and trauma. And then you've got a lot of LGBT characters. So you've got a bisexual guy, which is great to see. A lot of the time, romance. There it is, prints on paper. Which is rare to see as well, because you see bisexual women in the romance sphere being written a lot, but not a lot of books address how that experience is different for guys.
Yeah.
And then you actually also have a non-binary character in one of the books. No spoilers on which one, but that was exciting to see, because you don't often see. Yeah,
I really, really liked that, and I don't want to tell like a single detail because it's so good, but it definitely I didn't quite see it coming for a little while, and then as the story started to unravel, we were like, I wonder.
She did a good job, I think, sort of waiting to dispense those hints.
Yeah.
I caught on pretty quickly, but not immediately, which was great.
Yeah. And she treats it with, I think, the respect that it deserves. You know, it's not done, you know, so many times I think that romance writers will, or not even just any writer, will throw in a character so that they can check a box. Like, look, I did this, I've checked the box. And all of her characters,
that's not what's happening here at all.
They're all very fleshed out, and you feel like it's not like an aside, like, oh, and BTW, this character, you know, is non-binary. Just so you know, it's part of their story and who they are, and it plays into the plot, and it's not, you know, it's not just something that was tacked on to check a box, which I greatly appreciate.
Exactly. Yeah, which is really great, and that's consistent with all the characters. I believe that Alyssa Cole gets sensitivity readers for all of her books, all of her things,
amazing.
And that's generally best practice now among writers, I think, especially in the romance sphere, is it's considered best practice to try to get a sensitivity reader if you're writing about something with which you aren't familiar, so you can talk to someone and they can be like, no, that's not what it's like, please change that, that's really offensive. or no, actually, you just plain old got that wrong. So that's been really great, and I just love all those characters. I love the non-binary character, they're great. It was really cool to see. You don't often see protagonists with ADHD and that being addressed prominently in a book.
Not as adults, like a lot of kids and things like that, but definitely not near enough for adults.
Not near enough for adults. Yeah, you'll get the kids, but you don't get the adults as often. And adult ADHD is still a thing.
It absolutely is.
And I don't think I've read many romances with wheelchair-bound main characters either.
No. There's I just took a teen lit class, and we went through and we looked at all these different covers, and it's like, even like I think they said it was less than 1% of young adult covers feature a character that's like in a wheelchair or on crutches or anything like that.
And that is so messed up, because she's my favorite. I love her. I might like her more than Portia because she's such a nerd. Like, she's over there and she's like, I run a geek blog and I'm a fan of an anime. And her entire romance is, hey, you're making an escape room based on my favorite anime, but you don't love the anime enough, so you get over here and you watch anime with me while we eat pizza. And the guy's like, yes, marry me now. That is the dream.
Well, and she pops up a lot in some of the other books, which I think is really neat.
She's a consistent character. She's pretty significant in Duke by default, I know, because she's Portia's sister. And then
that's the other thing I really like about like the series as a whole is at no point are you taken aside like, oh, where did they come from? You know, like you have a bond, and it's like you're excited. You're like, oh, this character gets their own book. I'm so excited. Tell me more. You know, it's very much like, at least for me, it was really exciting. I mean, obviously, the people they fall in love with, sometimes you're like, I have not heard of such and such a person, but
they're new. But then they get integrated,
yes. And then you love them forever, like Tavish.
I know, they're wonderful. That was interesting, actually, because I read A Prince in Theory, which is, I guess, the 4th book. Counting the novellas. Hang on, so you've got Duke by Default has already happened. I think Can't Escape Love happens afterwards, but Once Ghosted, Twice Shy happens before, as well as
I think so.
But the point is, Nya is the main character of that book, or Naya. I have to look and see. And I think it's Naya, but I kept on mentally saying it Nya because I was thinking of the cat. But anyway, it's such a big plot point that all of the characters from all these books remain friends and message each other and like check in with each other and are like, hey, I noticed this thing and I was wondering if you're good. Because, like, if you're good with this, I'm good with this. But also, with all the love in my heart, this was not what I thought you wanted, and I just want to check and make sure you're cool. And then you get like lighthearted messages as well along the lines of, look, I'm getting ready for a wedding. What do you think of my dress? So it's really great.
And there's definitely like the intervention time where like, because I think more than once they'll either all come together on chat or like a big mass phone call where they're just like, okay, so we need to talk about this thing that just happened.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah. There were some decisions, and we have questions. We have questions about your decisions. I love it so much. It brings me joy.
It is definitely a joy thing. So what's your favorite book in this series?
My favorite book, and I wish I had it in front of me, is A Duke by Default, because I love Portia because she is just so completely like sassy. I love Tavish because dude's Scottish. I don't even think I need to explain myself.
There you go. You're good.
Outlander fans, you understand me. And I just love
sword fighting and flirting.
Yes,
I'm here for
sword
it.
fighting. And Tavish is just so like, oh man, he's very kind of grumbly and grouchy, which I always appreciate. And I don't know why, it's just something about that grumble and grouch that I just love, where people are just sort of just like, oh, you know, just disgusted with so many things. And he is very real, and like his level of tolerance for like fakeness is just a thing of beauty. And just his complete inability to want to deal with it is just awesome. And the relationship between the two of them is great, because they have that kind of great relationship where they definitely like push each other. So, you know, and kind of grind on each other, which I also think is great, because, you know, it's wonderful. Like, it's like,
wait, figuratively or literally? Figuratively or literally? It's a romance book. I'm just going to lob that out there.
Yeah, that one is definitely, yeah, that one's got details. It's yes, it's got some steam.
How delicious.
Yes. But yeah, I like that they sort of, you know, push each other's buttons and will antagonize each other, and they have kind of like that yin and yang balance where
you like the snipey romances.
I do like the
you
snipey
like the slightly
romances.
Antagonistic poke romances.
Yes.
That's your style. You like those.
I think I just like, you know, banter. I love witty banter.
Banter is wonderful. Characters who challenge each other are wonderful and help each other change. I am always on board for that.
Yeah, and it's probably just because like my husband is really great at calling me out when I do something terrible, and I made a bad choice. Yes, and I mean, in a lovely, wonderful, loving way. But you know, he doesn't let me just walk away when I made a choice. And we, you know, and I do the same thing. That, you know, oh, did you see that? That was a mistake. We should talk about that.
Absolutely.
And I think that all the characters, like, because you kind of touched on it earlier, that they talk a lot about what is a healthy relationship and what is an unhealthy relationship. And I think that that's really great.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
And a lot about trust. And that trust is important. And
trust is so important.
Can, you know, it's not easily given, gained, and can easily be lost. So what was your favorite? Tell me about your favorite.
I'm kind of thinking, I know I told you earlier it was A Princess in Theory. I'm kind of thinking, now that I'm talking more about Can't Escape Love, that it really is Can't Escape Love. So your favorite's the one I haven't read, and my favorite's the one you haven't read. I really like it. It's interesting, though, because it is tied so closely with Duke by Default that I'm interested to see, because I've already had a big plot point from Duke by Default spoiled just by reading that book first. Yes, it's the plot point you're thinking of. I'm sure it is. You know the plot point.
It's gotta be.
Yeah. So by reading
confirm nor deny here.
So I had a little trouble with it because I read it out of order, and I was like, okay, but what just happened? And so I'm interested to see if I return to Duke by Default and go back. But there's this really sweet moment where like they discover that these two, the guy used to make puzzles on, like, just quietly make puzzles with a camera on stream that, like, talk about great, or like solve Rubik's cubes, like solve various logic things, and then like this, he only had one viewer, and it was her. And I'm like, I am here for mutual nerdiness. I am here for like these mutual little misfits who are like, you know what, nobody really gets me, but it's okay, because I want to find out about
Mhm.
you, and I want to learn to get you. And that's what I'm
That
here
makes
for.
me happy.
It's sweet.
That makes me happy.
I know we're almost out of time. We wanted to
Yes.
talk about
Other
other romances
romances with
featuring
royals.
royalty and other STEM
Yes.
romances, but do we even have time?
Let's super quick. Super
Super
quick.
quick. Go,
Yes.
hurry, go fast.
Okay,
Okay.
so Red, White, and Royal Blue is the most amazing book ever, and everyone should read it. Just
It's another
everyone should read
romance
it.
featuring royalty. It's really
Yes.
fun.
It is the son of the first female president, and like the second in line Prince of England. Right? I got all those details right?
I think he's actually.
He's not first.
Yeah, I think you're correct. I think you're correct. There's the other guy.
Yeah. And then American Royals, which is a YA, it's kind of a I forget what they call it, the alternate history, and it's essentially, we all remember when they wanted to make George Washington the king, and he was like, no, I don't want to be king, except in this book he said, yes, I shall be king. And so it's kind of about the American royal family, and it is a thing of glory, and I am like literally dying inside a little bit every day that the second book has not come out. Little bit dying inside. Yes, Royal Holiday is one of Jasmine Guillory's books.
That's the one based off the royal wedding, right? That happened.
Yes. No, that's the Royal We.
What?
Yes.
Okay.
Royal Holiday is the Jasmine Guillory. She wrote it's part of the nerds. I'm gonna have to look it up now.
Is it one of those series? Is it a series book?
Yeah, it's a series book. It's one of the ones that we went and we met her, remember, when she was talking about... We met
Jasmine Guillory, which was fantastic.
Yes.
And I wish we could meet Alyssa Cole in my dreams when there's no plague.
Yes. The Wedding Date. It's the Wedding Date series.
Oh, it's a Christmas one. Okay,
yes.
So Royal Holiday is a Christmas book. I got you.
Yep, it's the fourth book in that
And it's
series.
got a mom. It's got a mom,
yes.
like a mom of an adult child getting some romance on. So that's
which I
good.
super love. And then the Royal We is like very, very loosely based on the royal wedding. It has a prince and an American girl, and there are shenanigans. I did not super love that one. It was a little long for me. A little bit too drama filled. I don't know if I'll read the sequel. I give it like a 3.5.
The others we like.
Yes, the others we like. But I wanted to mention it. So, and then we went to super quick talk about other steam romances.
Well, first, before we do that, really, really, really fast. If you like this series, there's extra materials on Alyssa Cole's website. She has made stuff from the books. Like there's a character with a newsletter. She made the newsletter. There's a character who's like the anime I told you about before. She's got some cute little cartoon pictures from the anime and some cosplay of the two main characters, and it's cute. They are so adorable. Like perfect phone background. Anyway, STEM romances, lightning fast.
Yes. Why are they also not all of them? Why are so many so bad?
I don't know.
I feel like a lot of times authors write them because it seems like a good idea. Like, oh, I'll write a STEM romance or a STEAM romance with all these, science and technology. And you read them and you're like, but all that science is very wrong. I love you. And it's a very funny, cute book, but the science is very, very wrong. There's a series that I read, and I pulled it up, which is super, super cute. And the series, it's just called the Nerd series by Vicki Thompson. And so, like, the first one is like a nerd in shining armor, and the nerd who loved me, nerd gone wild. Talk Nerdy to Me is the first one I read in the series because it had a computer programmer, and my husband is a computer programmer, and I was like, yeah, I have to read this. I have to. And
there's that.
Yeah, they're just cute. They're happy, cute little books, but there are definitely times where I was reading them and it's like, even I know, I don't think that is right. That is not right science. That science feels very, very wrong. Nerds Are From Mars was a particularly funny one because it's about like a space race and a couple of things. You're just like, oh, I see similarities to the real world and they feel very wrong. Very wrong. No.
I do like this book because it felt real.
Yes.
Because the main character, Letty, is a biologist. My friend spends a lot of time, he is a lab tech, so he analyzes lab samples and is looking into all of that. And so it matches with what he's told me, what Letty does in the lab, whatever you see of it. Also, warning, if you want to read this book, there is a pandemic subplot.
Mm-hmm.
There is.
Be aware. Be aware.
if you're really feeling not great about the pandemic, good news is, like, they take care of it, but also
Yes.
just be aware.
It's a thing that pops up.
Okay. So thank you so much for talking about this book with me. This was fun.
It was so much fun.
So everyone, thank you for tuning in as well. We'll answer questions that you have down in the comments.
In the comments. Comment. Tell us your favorite romances.
Yes, please. Tell us royals. Tell us about science. Tell us about, taking on responsibility that you shouldn't take on and having to set healthy boundaries.
We need to add to our reading list that are 1 million pages long. So comment.
Absolutely. Comment. So next week's Reader's Corner is going to be me again. We're doing Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. It's sci-fi fantasy. Our next romance one is next month, and that's going to be Get a Life, Chloe Brown, which is also immensely fun.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
I love that one. I cried. I definitely was like sitting there crying at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
Which was a thing. So we'll talk about that.
And it's steamy. Be aware, steam.
It is steamy. I wasn't crying about the steamy. The steamy was delightful. I was crying about other things. And then we've got a virtual story time coming up tomorrow, if you have any kids who want to watch. And there's the Bring Your Own Book game tomorrow night. If you're interested in coming for adults and families, it is at 7 o'clock. Have I missed anything?
Check our website, auroralibrary.org. We have tons of stuff. So much stuff.
Summer reading program is a go. So go and join that.
All right. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.